Tam Nakano has been one of the best parts of Stardom since her debut over 3 years ago. She has had quite the journey through Stardom, making a very huge impact on not just her own career, but many others as well. Let's take a look at the wrestler, Tam Nakano. Tam Nakano wasn't always a wrestler, holding quite the interesting life before she stepped foot in the squared circle. Before becoming a wrestler, she was an idol in an underground group called Katamomi Joshi. The group was disbanded very suddenly, and Tam Nakano found herself with no idea what to do. It was suggested that she try wrestling, and after watching a match, she found her previous thoughts on wrestling were wrong, and then found it beautiful. She would then go on to train under Yuna Manase for Actress Girls. She would also go on to wrestle for Atsushi Onita, who is a legend in the Japanese deathmatch scene. She would become somewhat of a regular in the retirement tour, participating in a number of different death matches. Showing that she was not afraid of new challenges, she would later leave Actress Girls to become a freelancer before showing up at Stardom. Tam Nakano's first ever appearance in Stardom happened almost a month before her first ever match. On July 16th of 2017, Tam Nakano walked into the ring to introduce herself, talking about making her dreams a reality, claiming being in the Stardom ring was a dream and she wanted to make it true. She saw being in Stardom as the true way to become a star. Tam spent the rest of the show watching from the head table as a special guest next to Rossi Ogawa. During the Oedo Tai title match, Oedo Tai made it clear that they had their eyes on Tam and that they wanted her to join their ranks, pulling her to the ring to propose to her essentially. Being confused and not sure what to do, she doesn't give them an answer, but Oedo Tai says it's okay and are willing to give her time to think it out. Tam's debut in the Stardom match was a qualifier match to determine a place in the 2017 5-Star Grand Prix. She fought against Natsuko Tora and won, starting her Stardom career off with a shot at the toughest Joshi tournament in the world. After the match, Kagetsu was there to help her to the back. Kagetsu saw something in Tam and wanted her to join her group, but Tam would not be so easily convinced. She would go on to participate in the 5-Star Grand Prix, doing pretty terribly, only pulling off a single win against Konami, finding that her dream in Stardom would not be so easily won. After almost every match, she would lose, and Oedo Tai would be there to support her. They would offer their shoulder and walk her out of the ring to the back, showing not only to the audience but to Tam as well that they were serious about wanting her. After the tournament, Oedo Tai and Queen's Quest set up a match. Hana, not being able to attend, asked their new member Tam Nakano to take her place. Tam is officially in Oedo Tai and thus began what to many is the pre-golden era of Oedo Tai. Now, an official member of Oedo Tai, Tam Nakano went through a complete metamorphosis, debuting on September 23, 2017 with a new look and a slightly more mischievous personality. This was when people started to notice the special abilities she holds. Tam is able to make absolutely any story golden with her charisma and promo skills. This was a time in Oedo Tai with many charismatic wrestlers. Hana Kimura, Chris Wolf, and Kagetsu were the charisma sponges of Stardom at the time, making everyone cheer for a heel group. Tam showed that she would not be outdone and made a name for herself as someone to keep an eye on, even with the most charismatic people in the promotion surrounding her. Tam joining Oedo Tai was not all roses though. Unfortunately for her, she joined during a very intense faction war between Oedo Tai and Queen's Quest. Being the only two factions in the promotion at the time, they butted heads quite regularly, mostly because of the differing philosophies in wrestling and Queen's Quest taking a member of Oedo Tai. Worse yet, nagging injuries she had gathered over her career has started bogging her down, resulting in her announcing that she would step away from in-ring action for the time being and instead be Oedo Tai's ring second and manager. With Tam stepping aside and becoming a manager, she needed to up her promos and charisma. That's just what she did. With the tag league starting, she would play an important role for Oedo Tai by helping them cheat and being their support. On October 14th of 2017, an important person in Tam's history is shown, Pichan, who is a stuffed panda bear that acts as Oedo Tai's producer. This bear would stick around long into Tam's career until Kagetsu's retirement, where Kagetsu was gifted Pichan from Tam as a going away present. On October 17th of 2017, Oedo Tai would challenge Queen's Quest to a series of singles matches. Tam would play an important role in the first match between Azumi and Chris, distracting the ref long enough to allow all of Oedo Tai to interfere and give Chris the Wolf the advantage. After the match, Tam would join Oedo Tai in a beatdown of Azumi, which brought out Momo Watanabe to help defend her, who had just returned from her injury. With Oedo Tai winning the series 2-1, Tam shows more of her ability to demand attention even when she isn't an active wrestler, bringing Oedo Tai some fresh rice and pickled cucumber for their hard-fought battles. This was Oedo Tai while Tam was there. It was silly, but for a while there wasn't a stronger family than this era of Oedo Tai. The feud between Oedo Tai and Queen's Quest was not settled with a singles series, and even though the tag league was going on, the feud was rekindled with the return of Momo Watanabe. During her return match, Tam would interfere, hitting Momo Watanabe with a weapon while the ref was distracted, causing Momo to lose. This of course ticked Momo off tremendously, resulting in Momo vowing to destroy Oedo Tai if it's the last thing she does. On November 4th, a bomb was dropped on the dynamic that Oedo Tai had set up. Kagetsu announced without telling the other members of Oedo Tai beforehand that a new member would be joining, and her name was Natsu Sumire. While everyone was celebrating the new addition to the roster, Hana and Tam were noticeably upset. Tam and Hana felt that they were adequate in covering the visual aspect of Oedo Tai, with Tam Nakano being cute and Hana Kimura being sexy. They were insulted that Kagetsu would bring in another wrestler without consulting them, and even worse, a visual who would be in direct competition with Hana. This started a rocky time in Oedo Tai, with turmoil plaguing their matches and promos. Hana and Tam taking every opportunity to attack or harass Sumire during this time. People online were split. Hana and Tam taking every opportunity to attack or harass Sumire. During this time, people online were split. They didn't know what was going to happen. Was Oedo Tai going to break up? To a lot of people, this was a very real possibility. With the Goddesses of Stardom belts on the line, Hana and Tam had to make a decision. As the match went on, Hana and Tam started acting more like their old selves and participating with Oedo Tai, until eventually they won. Tam and Hana would then go on and show affection towards Sumire for the first time since she was brought in. With things seemingly fixed and Tam's family having gotten over their mountain, it seemed like only good times were in Oedo Tai's future. Unfortunately, another huge storm was brewing for Tam, and she would find herself without her family, Oedo Tai. Queen's Quest had bested Oedo Tai once again, but this wouldn't be the end. Both sides tired of going back and forth. They decided to make a final battle. A 5 versus 5 match with Tam Nakano returning to in-ring action finally. The stipulation was that the last person to come out for each faction would be kicked out of their group if they lost. Both sides agreed and the order was drawn. The last person on each team was Momo Watanabe for Queen's Quest and Tam Nakano for Oedo Tai. The match was set for the 21st of January. As you might have guessed, Tam Nakano did not succeed in getting the victory for her team, and thus was forced to leave her family. January 21st, 2018, disaster struck Tam. She had just returned to in-ring activity, and through the suggestion of Kagetsu to make the match more interesting, Tam Nakano had lost her home. Whether she liked it or not, she was no longer a member of Oedo Tai. Sitting in the ring heartbroken and not knowing what to do, Io Shirai tries to capitalize and recruit Tam Nakano to Queen's Quest. Before Tam Nakano could respond, Momo grabs the mic to challenge for the white belt, giving Mayu Iwatani enough time to make it to the ring and barge in to recruit Tam before Io. Mayu had just returned from injury and, sensing a camaraderie, wanted Tam Nakano to join her newly created faction, Stardom's Army, making Tam Nakano a founding member of Stardom's Army, which would later go on to be named Stars. Mayu took advantage of Tam being dazed from having her world crumbled and ran off with her. Then next show, Tam would team up with Mayu for the first time without Oedo Tai. We saw a return to the Tam Nakano that first came to Stardom, and someone closer to what she is now. She only makes one request to join Stardom's Army, and that is to change the name of the group. With Mayu picking up Tam from the depths that she has fallen to, it's no wonder that she became so obsessed with her. From this moment on, Tam would live for Mayu. which would lead to one of the best feuds in Stardom history. During this time, Tam Nakano had become a target of Hana Kimura, with Hana feeling betrayed by Tam for leaving Oedo Tai. Mayu had also started a feud with Kagetsu, so a match was set. Mayu and Tam would face Kagetsu and Hana for the Goddesses of Stardom titles. With her old group turning on her and treating her like an enemy, Tam felt that Mayu was her only friend and her only support. Korakuen Hall, where all huge storylines tend to come to a conclusion, Tam and Mayu face Hana and Kagetsu for the tag titles. Mayu wishes to go on with Tam and surpass her old tag team Thunder Rock. Tam felt like she finally had someone to rely on, someone who would care for her and always be there beside her. Tam failed. She took the pin, causing their team to lose, and while giving a heartfelt speech about becoming better for Mayu, Mayu seemed to have other plans. As time went on, Tam would only get more attached to Mayu, while Mayu seemed to start distancing herself from Tam. Not in a malicious way, remind you, but that's just how Mayu is. Mayu tends to move on from things easily, while Tam only got more obsessed and protective. This was a recipe for disaster just waiting to happen. Two things have started rolling that would eventually snowball into a mountain. Saki Kashima, one of Stardom's original members who quit wrestling, was making her return, while simultaneously, Tam's beef with Oedo Tai only got stronger, resulting in her asking Io Shirai for help to battle Kagetsu and Natsu Sumire in an exploding bat death match. Tam was sick of Oedo Tai, and so she wished to bring them into her world of death matches to settle things once and for all. On April 1st of 2018, Tam took place in Stardom's first ever exploding bat death match, which she was not a stranger to. She needed to put Oedo Tai and her past behind her, and to do that, she needed to bring her old self to the present to finally say goodbye in two ways. One, to Oedo Tai for all of the good times she had, and two, to the death match Tam Nakano she once was. It was a hard-fought battle, and Tam won. 2018 brought the appearance of the Stardom Draft. For the first time in its history, Stardom had more than two active factions, where most, if not all, of the wrestlers were a part of them. This, even on the surface, wouldn't appear to be much in Tam's history, as she was not a faction leader, but this event showed something that might not have been obvious to the crowd until now. Tam was not a priority to Mayu. Up until this point, Tam had acted like Mayu Iwatani was her savior, someone who loved her and would protect her. In the draft, Tam was chosen 5th by Mayu, after Starlight Kid, Saki Kashima, Shiki Shibusawa, and Natsumi. What's even worse is that Saki was chosen 2nd. This is a trend that would continue, where Mayu would seemingly toss aside people she is close with, then focus on the newest member, this time being Saki. Of course, Tam would not raise a fuss over it, and she felt incredibly thankful to Mayu for picking her back up after her fall from Oedo Tai. But that kind of behavior could only last so long. Tam Nakano would not make a return to the ring until the Cinderella tournament held on the 30th of April. All the while, Mayu was teaming with and getting closer to Saki. This did not bother Tam too much, as what she wanted the most was to protect Stars and Mayu. Mayu and Tam would end up facing each other in the first round of the tournament, with Tam failing to get the win. During this time, Tam would play a small part in the turmoil amongst Stars members in Jungle. Tam Nakano was there for Mayu during it, but she did not play a pivotal role in Jungle's defection from Stars. As time went on, Tam grew into her own person, establishing a character that focused highly on the power of cute and idol presence. She's one of the main reasons Stars has a reputation of being the idol faction back in the day. One thing that really started showing itself was her high levels of honor. She had a sense that any battle that wasn't hard wasn't the right way to battle. Tam Nakano participated in the tournament between Shine and Stardom, getting a bye in the first round because of injury to her opponent before the match. She would go on to win the tournament against Britt Baker, announcing that at the next Korakuen Hall, she is going to challenge Viper. Coming out of a loss against Viper in Korakuen Hall for the SWA belt, Tam Nakano would help Starlight Kid and Shiki Shibusawa to go after the Artists of Stardom titles, currently being held by John. This is another quality of Tam Nakano that really shines. It's obvious that she cares a lot about the people in her life, her senpais and her kohais. While Starlight Kid has more wrestling experience than Tam Nakano is more than 10 years older than her. Tam really didn't play a huge role in this story, allowing Starlight Kid and Shiki to take the lead, and was more there for the support. The title attempt was, in the end, unsuccessful. Tam Nakano would then continue to support her stablemate Starlight Kid by teaming with her to become the #1 contenders for the tag titles in a gauntlet-style tournament. Tam participated in that year's 5-star Grand Prix, unfortunately starting off with a loss, going against the newly debuted Utami Hayashishita in her second ever match. Her second opponent was Konami, which was the only person she beat in the last year's tournament. She was able to keep the streak and pin Konami for her first points in the tournament. Starlight Kid and Tam Nakano would take advantage of their #1 contender status to challenge the then champions Mayu and Saki. While they failed to get the titles, this is an important event because it highlights one of the many times that Mayu chose someone else to be her partner. Back to the 5-star, where Tam Nakano would face Natsuko Tora, the person she beat last year to gain entry into the tournament. This is where their rivalry really blossomed. They started this match with a full-on sprint towards each other, having an intense street brawl. Tam Nakano versus Natsuko Tora was the beginning of Tam's ability to create the most interesting and intense feuds and matches every year. There are very few who seem to be as naturally gifted at bringing out the best in her opponent than Tam is. All of Tam's hard work finally paid off on September 30th, when with the help of Mayu Iwatani and Saki Kashima, she achieved her first title win. Winning the Artist of Stardom title, she took the time to continue her feud with Natsuko by rubbing it in her face, never missing an opportunity to continue or push forward some kind of story or feud. This would continue in that year's tag league, where Tam Nakano and Shiki Shibusawa would do very poorly, but end up getting a double knockout with Natsuko Tora, which showed Tam Nakano crawling to her even after the bell to finish the fight. During the end of 2018, Tam would venture off on a side project. Under the umbrella of Stardom, she would start her own mini promotion, which was a mix of death matches and an idol group she would manage. It didn't last very long, only going for a couple of shows before ultimately disappearing. One lasting element from this was actually Saya Kamatani. She was a member of the Stardom Idols group, and she was one of the 2 members to transfer over to Stardom when it shut down. The good times did not last though, as a new element had been introduced to Stardom. Well, new isn't exactly correct. A returning element. Arisa Hoshiki came out of retirement to wrestle for Stardom once again. She came back and rejoined with Mayu to continue their old tag team AMA, which did not go well with Tam. She was immediately off-put by Arisa, being incredibly against her joining Stars, going so far as straight up saying no when they asked her if Arisa could join. This would be the beginning to what some would call one of the best storylines in Stardom history. For about 7 months, Tam Nakano and Arisa would interact, with Arisa trying to get Tam to like her, and Tam being distant and even violent against her. I am only going to cover the basics here, as I have another video covering this whole storyline. This whole storyline would be the main driving force behind Tam's career, as her and Arisa spent the next 7-ish months growing closer, creating a special kind of bond that neither could really fully understand until they clashed in the ring on June 16th of 2019, when Tam Nakano challenged Arisa Hoshiki for her white belt. They put on one of the best matches in Stardom history, and was easily not just people's match of the year, but to many, their favorite Stardom match ever. The emotion, the intensity. Through battle in the ring, Arisa and Tam Nakano finally understood each other. They were not friends, they were something more than that. Tam Nakano promised Arisa that she would get better, then challenged to take the belt from her one day. It was something both wanted, but not with negative intentions, but with respect and love. With their newfound relationship, Arisa and Tam decided to partner up for the Tag League in 2019, which would end in great success. They would go on to beat out everyone else and win the tournament. With their win, they would be allowed a single title shot against the champions Jungle Kiona and Konami. They were unable to achieve a victory with Tam tapping out. Shortly after this, Arisa would end up retiring because of injury, leaving Tam Nakano without a way to keep her promise of taking the white belt from her. While one relationship was on its way out, another one would suddenly appear. On December 8th of 2019, Giulia would debut in Stardom and go on to be one of Tam's biggest rivals. They found a kind of camaraderie with each other, feeling that the other had something special and that they felt alive when wrestling each other. Tam Nakano and Giulia would end up facing each other for the white belt 3 times so far. The first in a tournament to determine the new white belt holder. Tam Nakano would then start a storyline and character change that didn't really have any changes in her character. What I mean by this is that basically everything about Tam stayed the same, but her goals and what she wants to protect changes drastically. With the purchase from Bushiroad, a bunch of wrestlers from other promotions started jumping ship and wanting to join Stardom. This has made it very crowded, and with the appearance of Giulia and her going down the road to being the next face of Joshi, Tam was being left behind. Until she decided to take on Giulia herself, to show that it wouldn't be as easy as Giulia thinks to come in and dominate Stardom. Tam Nakano became the leader behind the force trying to protect Stardom's honor. She started an intense and heated rivalry with Giulia and tried to take Giulia's Wonder of Stardom title. She was unsuccessful the first time, but vowed to chase her to the end of the universe and take the title. She would get another chance in October of the same year, putting on, to many, the match of the year, which was not a new phenomenon for Tam Nakano. She failed once again, and the path for Tam seemed to be closed. Except, Tam had something else in mind. She was no longer happy being a sidekick in Stars. She wanted to make her own team and be a leader instead of a follower for the first time ever. Enter Mina Shirakawa and Unagi Sayaka, recently leaving Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling. These two were the newest faces in Stardom. Coming from a background that Tam could relate to, she offered her hand to these two and asked them to join in Tam's new subgroup, Cosmic Angels. Of course, this was not a smooth transition. As you could probably guess, Mayu did not take this very well. Mayu has been betrayed by many people in the past and saw Tam creating this new mini-group within Stars and reacted very harshly. Mayu and Starlight Kid would then go on to treat Tam like a traitor well before Tam ever announced she planned on splitting off. This led to many harsh words both in the ring and online. If Tam wasn't going to split off before, how Mayu and Starlight treated her and Tam's new friends essentially cinched it. This led to a showdown after Cosmic Angels won the Artists of Stardom titles, and Mayu had had enough. Stars vs. Cosmic Angels, the ultimate showdown and the resolution to one of the best feuds of the year, again involving Tam Nakano. After a hard-fought battle, each side fighting through many emotions, Cosmic Angels came out on top. Tam then announced that Cosmic Angels officially splits off from Stars and becomes Stardom's 5th official faction. Tam Nakano was not just responsible for herself anymore, but for her faction as well. But tragedy would strike when Mina would become injured and miss the next couple of months of action, leaving Cosmic Angels not able to grow as a group and their momentum stifled. So Unagi went off and started her trials, while Tam Nakano once again set her eyes on the Wonder of Stardom title and Giulia. This time, Giulia did not think she deserved another shot, so she offered a stipulation that for Tam to get another shot at the title, she would have to put something on the line as well. This time, their match would be hair versus hair. Tam Nakano, being an idol wrestler, someone whose looks were very important, would have to put up something she truly cherished. With a look of determination, she accepted. What would transpire was nothing short of one of the best matches in Stardom history, on the same level as Tam Nakano versus Arisa Hoshiki. It was intense, it was brutal, it was emotional, and after an absolute war, Tam stood victorious, achieving her first singles title in Stardom after 1,292 days of fighting as hard as she could. After 3.5 long years, Tam Nakano had finally achieved the ultimate victory. From here, her story continues, and the world looks on in anticipation at what Tam Nakano is going to do to make her title run special, like she did with so many other reigns before her.